Good morning. My name is Alla McCoy. I am Director of Startup Support at the University of Maryland's Ventures. I'm very happy to welcome all of you who join in our live session today, and also everyone who's watching it on YouTube. Today, we will be talking about startup support for innovators at the University of Maryland. Most of the resources we will be discussing today are geared for companies or innovators who are interested in starting companies around technologies developed at the University of Maryland labs. Go ahead and adjust a little bit my camera. But a lot of these resources are also available to others as well. And I will discuss a lot of these resources in detail. So again, thank you so much for joining. For those who are joining just now, welcome. Please feel free to submit questions throughout the presentation via the Q&A function. It should be probably at the bottom of your screen. And you can submit your questions anonymously if you wish to do so. We are recording this session. It will be posted on our channel, so if you prefer to remain anonymous, you can do so by submitting your questions anonymously. So why don't we go ahead and get started? So the services that we offer are for innovators in either sciences or the humanities who are passionate about their research and would like a low-risk opportunity to transform their research or results of their research into a product or service to benefit the public. So somebody who is interested in going beyond a paper or even issue a patent and transform that into something that the public can actually use. If you are a University of Maryland student, faculty, researcher, you are at a great place. A University of Maryland has very rich innovation and entrepreneurship ecosystem. Anywhere from our office, Ventures, MTech, University of Maryland Libraries. There's so many resources. It's really confusing. Just looking at this, it's a lot. So where do you start? How do you even begin to use all of these wonderful resources? It's very confusing. There are over $1 million in funding opportunities for startups that are coming out of the University of Maryland. And so these are the ones listed here, and we'll discuss each of these separately. So to make sense of all of the wonderful resources at a great university, we worked across the ecosystem to create Startup Guide. So if you visit startupguide.umd.edu, you will see a very detailed path through all of these wonderful resources and funding opportunities in a way that makes sense. And the resources the guide is divided into four parts, 4 steps that correspond to the stage of company development. So first is feasibility assessment. This is even before you start a company, trying to see, is this actually a good idea? Are there people who need this and such? Then you would move to startup formation, startup acceleration, and sustainable company. Typical startup that is being built around intellectual property developed at the University of Maryland would follow this path. Of course, every startup is different. Everybody's path will be somewhat different, but this is general path that you would follow. So you would first submit intellectual property disclosure, and we'll discuss a bit more what that means. Then participate in the market research program. Armed with that information, receive technology validation grant, and then form the company, receive company information, funding, license technology into the company. There is space here at the University of Maryland And then there's R&D funding and other investment funds available to these startups as well. So this is a 10,000 foot view, and let's zoom in what that means. So step one would be to submit intellectual property disclosure to Ventures. And what that means is you would submit a form to Ventures describing what is it that you developed, what are the results of your research that you developed in your lab, or if you're not in the lab, if you're in the office and you're doing social sciences type of research, you would describe what is it that you have developed. And we'll talk a little bit more what intellectual property actually means. So each of you, or each case would be assigned a innovation manager who would evaluate the innovation that was disclosed and work with each inventor or author to develop intellectual property protection plan if one is needed, and do intellectual property filings if they're needed. So to disclose your innovation, you can visit go.umd.edu/disclose-IP, and you will find the forms and other explanatory information. Since there's a bit of a confusion, especially for people not familiar what intellectual property means, we'll do a very, very brief primer on what is intellectual property. So according to the World Intellectual Property Organization, here's the definition of what is intellectual property. It refers to the creations of the mind, such as inventions, literary and artistic works, designs, symbols, names, and images used in commerce. And used in commerce only refers to names and images in this context. There's several different types of intellectual property. The first type is patent. Many of you heard about that. The patent is the right, it's a negative right. It's the right to exclude others from making, using, or offering for sale or selling an invention. And there are three types of patents: utility patents, any new and useful process, methodology, machine, article of manufacture, or composition of matter, or new and useful improvement thereof. The next type is design patent, a new, original, and ornamental design of an article of manufacture. And then plant patents, any distinct and new variety of plants. So the next type of IP is trademark or service mark or service mark. A trademark is a word, name, symbol, or device that is used in trade with goods to indicate the source of the goods and to distinguish them from the goods of others. So for example, Apple Electronics, here's my iPhone that has the Apple trademark. You know that this phone comes from a particular company. Service mark is the same as a trademark, except it identifies and distinguishes the source of a service rather than the product. And the term trademark and mark are commonly used to refer to both trademarks and service marks. Both trademarks and patents, to obtain those rights, you have to file an application with the USPTO, and you may or may not be granted that right. Copyright is a slightly different intellectual property right, in that it applies as soon as the author fixes the work in a tangible form of expression. So for example, as soon as you take a photo with your phone or your camera, as soon as you draw something, as soon as you write down something, you write that poem, you write a paper, you type it up, copyright applies immediately. You don't actually have to apply to protect it. You can register copyright and to achieve or to get higher level of protection. And unlike patents and trademarks that are registered with USPTO, trademark is registered with Library of Congress with the US Copyright Office. But again, it applies as soon as the author fixes the work in a tangible form of expression. And the last type of IP we'll talk is trade secret. It's obviously information that's kept secret in an organization, typically it would be a for-profit organization. And to qualify as a trade secret, the information has to meet certain criteria. Has to be commercially valuable, be known only to a limited group of persons, and the company or the organization has to take reasonable steps to show that they actually are taking steps to protect it and keep it secret. So at the University of Maryland, because we are an academic institution, academic organization, with typically the two of the most common intellectual property rights that we are dealing with or we're working with are patents and copyrights. So again, you would submit intellectual property disclosure describing what it is that you invented, what is it that you wrote, created. It could be a new medical device, it could be a new molecule, but it also could be something that's copyrightable. It could be new curriculum that you came up with. It could be something completely different. It doesn't necessarily have to be an invention to be considered intellectual property and to be considered valuable. So you would submit description of what it is, what your innovation is. And again, you would work with a trained professional to develop an intellectual property protection plan if one is needed. So to learn more about intellectual property, and to learn more about many other topics, what you can sign up for more workshops in our Startup Fundamentals workshop series, such as one that we are doing today. And there are many others. So we actually have attorneys talking about intellectual property more in depth, a lot more than the very brief primer that I just did for you. We have venture capitalists, entrepreneurs discussing every single detail of how to build a company. So you can look and see which workshops we have coming up, and sign up for the ones that are of interest. If you miss any, you can also browse them on our YouTube channel. Startup PMD YouTube channel. Most of them, not all of them, but most of our workshops are recorded and posted there. However, watch out for the sessions that are not recorded and are live only. Another great resource available to you are our great entrepreneurs in residence. We have a fantastic lineup of people with diverse backgrounds and diverse experiences, people who built large companies, small companies, life sciences, logistics companies, anywhere in between. So these individuals are available to you. It's a free service, and to sign up, you should visit go.umd.edu/EIR2022. You can, on that website, you can look at their backgrounds. You can see links to their LinkedIn profiles. And then you can also see the links to their availability and sign up to participate in a meeting. Most of them are doing meetings on Zoom, so you would sign up and receive a Zoom meeting, so it's fairly easy to connect with them. And then once you develop a relationship, they're also happy to come to your lab, meet with you on campus, and to work with you further. But those first few initial meetings would be on Zoom, fairly easy to sign up and attend. So one of the first steps after you disclose your IP you should take, I should consider participating in ICOR to conduct your initial market research. It's a program offered here at the University of Maryland. In fact, it's a national program run by NSF. The University of Maryland is one of the nodes, and I'm proud to say we have one of the best group of instructors here at the University of Maryland. And it's also offers a pathway to national I-Corps. So the regional University of Maryland I-Corps is a 3-week program. It's done virtually, where you would participate in customer discovery, meaning you would be interviewing potential customers, or who you think your customers are, and asking them all the great questions about would they find your innovation valuable, how would they use it, or not. And usually people find a lot of very valuable information as they go along. So the 3-week program is very kind of low key. It doesn't come with any funding, but like I mentioned, it provides a pathway to national I-Corps run by NSF, and that program comes with $50,000 in funding. Participating in either regional or national significantly increases chances of SBIR and many other grants, and also VC funding. It's a very well known and respected program. University of Maryland is organizing the next I-Corps session in January. So if you're interested or even curious, I would recommend visiting the URL icorps.ub.edu and signing up for their upcoming info session. Or if you would like to apply, go ahead and submit the application. And once you know a bit more about your market, who your innovation would benefit, who needs it, you're encouraged to apply for TEDCO MII Technology Validation Grant. So this is a grant, again, both I-Corps and Technology Validation Grant are things that you would do before you even form a company. So these things are done at the university as a research. So this comes to a researcher's lab. This money comes to a researcher's lab. It's $115,000, but there's no overhead. And the entire amount would be spent on a technology validation project. You could test your technology, you could develop an MVP, and this is done in your lab here at the university, so you don't need to buy equipment for the company, you don't need to spend money on equipment, materials and such. It's all done here at the university, and the money can be used on PI salary, student salary, buy materials, equipment, and also hire an outside consultant and expert if you need to. One of the deliverables of this grant is commercialization planning. Commercialization plan, meaning a plan on how you're actually going to start the company once you're done with this project. So to apply for TEDCO MII, you would be paired with a site miner. So one of these individuals will be working with you on helping you shape your application, and then they will also be working with TEDCO to defend your application. So they're experienced site miners, they've done this before. They can be extremely helpful in shaping the application in a way that they know that the reviewers are looking for. Here's a TEDCO MII program metrics. As you can see, success rate is fairly high and it's been growing. In fiscal year 2023, success rate was 89%. 9 applications that were submitted, 8 were approved. And that includes both phases of the MII program. So again, once you're done with your TEDCO MII program, you have your commercialization plan. You've done a lot of research at this point. This is when you would form a company. This would be a good point to actually start the company. And at that point, you would start looking for space for your company. There are several options here on campus. We have Raven Building Incubator. It's right next to the School of Engineering. They have office space and they also have lab space with fume hoods. There are also options in the Discovery District across Baltimore Washington Boulevard, anywhere from a hot desk at WeWork to larger spaces as well. You would then work with, the company would work with Young Ventures to obtain a startup license to the intellectual property, depending on what the intellectual property is. And Young Ventures is offering express startup IP license that's very friendly to startups with no upfront cash payments, because startups usually don't have cash, or the cash that they have should be spent on R&D, market development and such, not necessarily upfront license fees. So any researcher, faculty, staff working on a startup or working for a company that's not at the university needs to submit conflict of interest disclosure. It's required by Maryland, state of Maryland law and by University of Maryland. It's a fairly, I don't want to say it's a fairly easy process. The application is online in Quali, and the office is very responsive and very sensitive to the fact that startups are something that's being encouraged, and the university wants startups developed, university wants startups coming out of the university. So they are very helpful and work with faculty on developing management plan if needed for their conflict of management, conflict of interest plan. So it's not a negative thing, it's not a bad thing, but it's something that would protect you as a researcher, making sure that you are compliant and making sure that nobody can question your research integrity. So again, not a negative thing, and something that you should do as soon as you form a company. And the next step would be to apply for company formation funding, which is $300,000 that goes to the company, and then MIPS and SBIR funding. So again, just very briefly, so for the company will be applying for TEDCO MII and also working with the same site miner. You would work for phase 1 or for technology validation phase, and they would help you develop that application. It's not a grant, it's a convertible debt note that would go into a company. But at that very early stage of company development, it's really difficult to find money. And this is one of those instances where, yes, while it's not a grant, but this is very valuable for the company to set up and to start applying for other funding opportunities. So MIPS funding is available to any startup or any company that's located in the state of Maryland, and it provides very valuable R&D funding that could be done at the University of Maryland. And then obviously SBIR funding. Both MIPS and SBIR take much longer to obtain than TEDCO MII. So typically you would first get your TEDCO MII to get set up, and then start applying for MIPS and SBIR funding. So if you are a researcher, PhD student, graduate student, postdoc at the University of Maryland, who are very passionate about what you're doing as a research activity, and would like a low risk opportunity to see if this could become a startup. So what you should do is first, I would recommend visiting Startup Guide, reviewing the steps, apply for that's October, but it should say January regional I-Corps at I-Corps.umd.edu. sign up to talk to an entrepreneur in residence, register for startup fundamentals workshops. You can check the website monthly, or you can also sign up and be a part of a mailing list, so you would receive an email and be notified by email and some reminders. If you haven't yet submitted your intellectual property disclosure, you should do so. And you should also, once you're done with all of those steps, then you should apply for TEDCO MII technology validation funding, or consider applying if you're eligible. So those are your next steps. And just to give you some inspiration, here are some of the success stories that came out of the University of Maryland. This is INQ is a quantum computing company that went public in 2021. They are located still here at the University of Maryland's Discovery District. You can drive by and see them on the way to the metro station. So Hazel Analytics is an example of a company that was a collaboration between a social sciences professor, Ginger Jin, professor of economics, and professor of computer science, Dr. Ben Peterson. So they created a company based on data. So this wasn't just pure tech, it was data and software. And this company was acquired in 2023 and has a lot of, before it was acquired, it had a lot of great customers that they built. And they built the entire company based on MII funding, by the way. Here's a question very quickly. Does the technology have to be developed at UMD to apply for TEDCO MII? And does the technology have to be new? So yes, so TEDCO MII is a program that is available to further develop or validate technology developed at a University of Maryland lab. It doesn't have to be, so there are 5 universities that participate in the program. If it's a university, if it's a technology coming out of the lab, University of Maryland College Park, University of Maryland Baltimore, University of Maryland Baltimore campus, Johns Hopkins, or Morgan State University. So those are eligible, but yes, it has to be technology that is developed at a university lab. So here's another example of a very successful professor, researcher at the University of Maryland, Dr. Srinivasa Raghavan. He's a professor of chemical and biomolecular engineering, and he has been extremely successful in churning out startups around technologies that he develops in his lab. And what he usually does, that works really well, is he will work with a PhD student, a postdoc, to develop an invention, and then that PhD student, a postdoc, spins out the company, and he moves on to the next project or the next invention. So these are 3 very different companies, very different stage of development, and he keeps churning them out. Please. Do we have any other questions? That question. Does anybody have any other questions about anything that I've mentioned? I also will. I'm happy to share the slides with anybody who needs them, and I will be happy to share the link to the recording. You can also schedule time to talk to me and schedule a meeting. Do we have another question? I'm sorry, I cannot answer any questions about application to the University of Maryland. Once you are here and you're a student, you're interested in startups, there are lots of other resources for students, but you should reach out to the admissions office to ask about the application process. But as you can see, University of Maryland has a lot of great resources. So any other questions? Well, if there are no more questions, I would like to thank everyone who came and attended the session. And again, happy to share the slides and happy to share the link to the video so you can review it again, and also happy to meet with whoever would like to meet and discuss any of these questions in person or via Zoom.